Please join me in welcoming Dr. Richard Land.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation, and thank you for having me here to speak to the Texas Alliance for Life. And you know, it's really interesting sitting here at this table watching the progress that's been made in the Republican Party of Texas. One of the things that happens with advancing age is you get more perspective. I am a native Houstonian. I was the junior high campaign manager for Richard Nixon in 1960, and we won in my junior high school. Now, I'll save you the arithmetic. In July of 1946, George W. Bush was born. In August of 1946, Bill Clinton was born. In November of 1946, Laura Bush and I were born. We're all 63 this year, and 3 of the 4 of us are mature, responsible adults. In 1961, I was a volunteer in John Towers' campaign when he became the first Republican senator elected in Texas since Reconstruction. And in 1964, Jerry Patterson, who you will all know, Jerry Patterson and I were high school classmates, and we were the co-chairman of the Goldwater for President campaign in our high school. And we campaigned, you know, we went around, people turned dogs on us, they turned hoses on us, and made suggestions to us that made it clear that they had vivid imaginations but limited knowledge of human anatomy. As we campaigned against the Texas president. But I still have my AU H2O button, and in my heart, I still know Barry was right. Then when I went off to college and then came back after 10 years of graduate work, undergraduate and graduate work, came back to Texas and then had the privilege of working for Governor Bill Clements in his second term. He said, "Richard, I want you to come to Austin and I want you to help me get pro-life legislation passed." We were one of 9 states in the entire country that had no regulation of abortion. We had more regulation of veterinary clinics than we had of abortion clinics in 1988. And under Governor Bill Clements, we changed that. I saw him go over to Bill Hobby's office and face him down and say, "Bill, let it come to the floor, or we're gonna march around here and blow bugles and break crockery till you let us have a vote." And so to see the extent to which Texas, largely under Republican leadership, has become probably the most pro-life state in the country, it shows you what can be done when people bring their convictions to bear on public policy and decide to make government of the people, by the people, and for the people, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I have a magazine I read called The Economist. It's sort of the British version of Time. And several months ago, they had a cover story. It said, "California or Texas? 2 visions of America's future." Well, you know, boy, that's really hard, isn't it? California or Texas? I think we're going to find in November that more and more Americans like the future that Texas provides rather than the future that California provides. Recently, I was in a debate with a rabbi, very liberal fellow, and he started off the questioning to me. He said, "Richard, why is it that you conservatives are so consumed by pelvic politics. Now, that was his rather droll phrase for the sanctity of human life and trying to keep marriage as defined by its creator as between a man and a woman. And I said, you know, that's a cute little phrase, David, but I can't think of anything more substantial and more important as a moral issue than what is a human being? When does a human being become a human being? And when does society owe human beings the obligation of protecting them from being killed when they are unable to defend themselves? That seems to me to be about as important an issue as you can have, and sex has nothing to do with it. And when it comes to marriage, of course, I said, look, marriage is the basic building block of human society. That's why every society in human history, no matter how primitive, no matter how advanced, every one of them has severely regulated who can get married to whom and under what circumstances, and under what circumstances they can dissolve that marriage because of the enormous impact that marriage has on the next generation of citizens, namely children. So I want to commend you. When I was a young boy growing up in Houston in the Baptist church that I attended, we used to sing, "I'm in the Lord's army." We had motions to go with it. You know, we'd march. I may never march in the infantry. I may never shoot the artillery. I may never zoom over the enemy. But I'm in the Lord's army. Well, I want to say to you, I salute you, because every one of you, you're in the Lord's army. Because the Lord is pro-life. There's no question about that. There's a reason why, alone, among all the civilizations of the Mediterranean basin, the Jews did not practice abortion and did not practice infanticide. Every other civilization did it routinely. The Greeks did it. The Romans did it. The Egyptians did it. The Assyrians did it. The Babylonians did it. They all did it. Not the Jews. Why? Because their God, who is the one true God, had made it very clear that he was involved before conception. Jeremiah, before you were in your mother's womb, I knew you, he says. And while you were in your mother's womb, I sanctified you and made you a prophet to the nations. David solved the question that is indeed above President Obama's pay grade and everyone else's. When does life begin? Psalm 51, he says, in Psalms 51, he says that at the moment of his conception, he had a sin nature. Only a human being with a soul and a spirit can have a sin nature. David went on under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit to write that God literally knitted him and embroidered him together in his mother's womb. And all of his parts were written in God's book before any of them came to be. Whenever conception takes place, God's involved. And God has a plan and a purpose for every human life. God never created a nobody. Everybody is a somebody to God. And so, when the Christian faith became overwhelmingly Gentile, which it did at a very early stage in the history of the church, it's estimated that by the fall of Jerusalem in 70 A.D., there were probably 20,000 Gentile Christians for every Jewish Christian. The very first teaching of the Christian faith after the death of the apostles.